Episode number 19 of Currently Inked for October 27th, 2016 is brought to you by Van Ness Pens at vanness1938.com. Greetings, everybody. Welcome to Currently Inked here on the Pen Habit. Got another fun show for you. A lot of good questions. I submitted a plea on Twitter the other day saying we're running low on questions, and y'all took care of me there. So I thought today's episode, since I haven't really written through any of the pens that I have used in the last little while, and I'll talk about that a little bit later maybe, I thought this would be a good opportunity to go back and revisit some of the pens that I have reviewed previously, including one pen in particular upon which my opinions caused something of a maelstrom. So we will get to that in a little bit, but first let's go ahead and dive into some questions. So Omas Lover from Ohio asks, many of the pens you purchased are no longer in your collection. This is true. What are the best places to resell pens in your opinion? Well, for me, probably the best place to resell pens is on my own website, but obviously that's not for everybody. I have a couple thoughts on this. First, not to sound too much like a commercial for the TV show Cheers, but you want to go where everybody knows your name. So the best places online to go sell your pens are places where a community already exists and you are a known commodity. If you can go to a pen shows are generally pretty good places to sell pens, although it tends to be a little bit better for vintage pens if you have those. If you don't have vintage pens, or you don't get a chance to go to pen shows, look at the Reddit forum. I think it's PenSwap or something like that. I don't remember the exact name of the Reddit forum. I am not, admittedly, a frequenter of Reddit anymore. I used to go fairly regularly. I pop in every now and again, but I don't frequent the site very often. Also, the FP Geeks forum or the FPN classifieds. With FPN, I think in order to post classifieds, you have to be a member. I don't know for sure if that's the case. There is a trade channel on the Pen Addict Slack, which, again, I used to frequent a lot, but haven't been able to for a while. But generally speaking, if you just go in, no one's heard of you, and you start listing your pens for sale, people are going to, especially if they're high-end pens, people are going to be really leery. So find a community, be a participant, be a constructive, upbeat, energetic participant, and not a jackhole, and get to know people in that community. And I think you'll find you'll be able to sell your pens at a pretty good price that way. Those are really the best ways to go about it. I mean, you can sell your pens on eBay or things like that, but eBay has gotten something of a bad name among the pen community because it's just so easy to defraud people. So if you've got a community and people know who you are and know how to contact you outside of that community, that's usually the best place to look at selling your pens. All right. Let us see what number 2 is. And I apologize, my computer is running super slow today. My internet connection is running super slow, so it may take me a while to get through to some of these questions. This next question comes from Jason in Sydney, Australia, who says, I think you have previously mentioned you have an ultrasonic cleaner. When and why do you use it? I'm looking for a few tips. So I talked about this a few episodes back. I keep my ultrasonic cleaner next to the sink where I clean all my pens. I fill it with soapy water, but I also have a very tall shot glass kind of a thing that I fill with Rapido-Ease or Rapido-Ease, I don't know how it's pronounced, which is a pen cleaning solution. If I have a pen that will not run, I can't flush it clean, what I will often do is fill it with clean water and then stick it nib tip down in the water and let it vibrate the water inside the pen to loosen up some of the gunk. Likewise, if I'm working on repairing a vintage pen, that sort of thing, I will often I'll take the pen apart and run the parts through the ultrasonic cleaner. Obviously being careful of whatever the material is made out of and, I don't leave it soaking in there for long periods of time. For me, the ultrasonic cleaner is just a way to get a little bit of an extra oomph when you need to. Certain inks are a little problematic. Certain pens will capture a little bit of the ink in a way that's really hard to get out. And so I use the ultrasonic cleaner for that. Maybe 10% of the cases where just regular flushing it with water doesn't quite do the trick. So, and if you want a more in-depth explanation, check a few episodes back where I talk about how best to use an ultrasonic cleaner. Well, let's go ahead and go into some re-reviews or revisiting of some of my old pens. So the next pen I want to talk about is this one. This is the TWSBI VAC 700. Now, I have had this pen since very early on in my collecting days. This was my first. I'm pretty sure this is the first pen I bought, other than the hand-turned kit pens that I had bought a while back. I loved the idea of the vacuum filler or the vac filling system, and the plunger type vac filling system. I found over time that this is a pen I didn't enjoy using as much as I thought I would. I love the ink capacity. I love this is one of the few demonstrators I really enjoy. The little rubber stopper on the bottom of the plunger here, and I don't know how well you'll be able to see that little kind of conical piece right there. That's part of the design of a lot of vac fillers to keep the ink from, it's all kind of like a double reservoir. So there's the big reservoir down here and then the feed. So it basically, when the pen's closed all the way down, it keeps the ink from flowing. I was finding I was having to open it up pretty often, and that it's just the way I use pens. It doesn't make a lot of sense for me. However, I loved the interchangeable nib units. This is the first stub nib that I ever got, actually, is this 1.5 millimeter stub nib. And the reason I still have it, even though I very rarely use it anymore, is because this is the pen I use when I'm doing ink reviews. So when I'm writing out my ink reviews, I always use this little drink here. For a couple of reasons. It's really easy to clean. And that's one of the things that I really like about these TWSBIs is vac fillers can be really tricky to clean on occasion. And so I tightened it down pretty tight, but normally I can just, there we go, loosen it up with my hands here, unscrew the back out, just flush the whole thing with water and call it good. Now, if I were using this pen as a daily writer, I would probably be a little bit more careful about doing that. I have become of the mindset that you only take the pen apart if you absolutely have to get it clean. And I'm not talking about like spick and span clean. I'm talking about 98% of the ink is gone, but it doesn't need to look like it's brand new kind of a thing. So I take this apart because it's easy to clean. It's easy to fill, especially if I want to limit the amount of ink I put in. I just use an ink syringe and pour it into the barrel directly, instead of having to do a full fill. So that's why I keep it around. It's overkill for something like that, but I like the nib, and it's held up really well. People talk about the TWSBI cracking issues a lot, and I'm not saying it's not an issue. I'm just saying I've never experienced it myself. So they've lowered the price on this from when I bought it. I'm pretty sure I paid around $80 for this when I bought it. I think they're down around 60, 65 these days. It's a nice pen. It just wasn't quite the right fit for me, but since I started using it for my ink reviews, and it's one of those pens that I go back to, or I try to keep consistent with the pens I use for my ink reviews, so you can get a sense of how it compares from pen to pen. I've kept it around. All right, my next question comes from Charisse in Virginia, who says, you mentioned ancient copper in your latest currently inked, and you've recently mentioned diamine autumn oak. Are these basically the same, but autumn oak has more shading? Do you prefer one over the other, or is this a seasonal obsession? And then part 2 of her question is, would you be willing to provide more information on the reasons why you no longer use Noodler's inks? So first things, diamine autumn oak and ancient copper. Here is ancient copper. Here is autumn oak. They are actually quite different. This is much more orange. This is much more red-brown. I prefer autumn oak, but I love ancient copper. I mean, they're both really wonderful inks. They're both very autumnal in feel. This is almost identical to the color my hair used to be back when I still had hair. Um, but I just love the shading on Autumn Oak. It's orange, but it's readable orange. It's not so painfully bright. Both behave beautifully. Ancient Copper can, for some people, cause a little bit of nib crud, some nib creep, and kind of drying crusties on the nib. It's absolutely harmless, but it bugs some people. I've never ever experienced it, but those who have, all you have to do is wipe it off the top of the nib, and you're good to go. You don't even have to do that. You can just leave it there if you don't mind the way it looks. So yeah, I love both of them. I do tend to use both of them more this time of year in the autumn because it's, it looks like harvest colors, but they're not really all that similar in color. So as for Noodler's inks, I still use Noodler's inks. I don't buy a lot of Noodler's inks anymore. There are a couple reasons for that, and I've talked about this before, and I don't know why people make such a big deal of this. It's not that big a deal. Everybody has certain things that they like and that they don't like and that they go toward and that they don't, and it is what it is. So for me, a lot of my pens are very expensive, as you well know, and I am getting more and more careful about the inks that I use in them. So I'm generally avoiding a lot of inks with funky characteristics that I don't need. So a lot of Noodler's inks are bulletproof, waterproof, UV proof, nuclear blast proof. I don't need any of those characteristics. Some of them are very hard to clean out. They're very, very thick, viscosity wise. I think I read somewhere or remember from a while back that Nathan Tardif actually makes Noodler so you can dilute the inks by quite a bit, thus increasing the value of the ink. I also tend to find the writing characteristics, for me, a little bit on the greasy side, especially depending on the paper you use. I am, as my tastes morph and change over time, I tend to find myself liking inks that are lubricated but not oily. And I get kind of an oily feel with some of the Noodler's inks. Now, Nathan Tardif of Noodler's, who he basically is Noodler's ink, is a pretty outspoken guy. He's got some videos. You can watch him on YouTube. He's got some very explicit and, points of view and political leanings and that sort of thing. He integrates some of those into his products. Now, generally speaking, I don't really care what a person's political point of view is. You believe what you want. As long as you treat other people with kindness and respect, I don't really care what it is you believe. However, once you start incorporating your political views into your products, that's where I start to take umbrage. It's like if you believe something, that's fine. But if you start turning your product, if you take that belief and start incorporating it into your product, that's where I tend to be a little bit more reticent to give my money away. And some of Nathan's views and some of mine don't mesh, and that's absolutely fine. It's totally fine. I try not to incorporate politics into what I do here on the Pen Habit, but that's okay. If he wants to do that, it's his company. He's certainly welcome to. But for me, buying a product with a political statement feels like I am either supporting or not supporting that political statement. And so that's one of the reasons why I don't buy a lot of Noodler's inks anymore. The other big thing is there are so many inks out there. And, I've got over 200 bottles of ink. I've got, what is it? Something like, I've got 9 bottles of Noodler's ink. I had probably 11 or 12. So I still have a fair bit in my collection. And some of the colors I really like. And with as many colors and as many inks as he has in his line of inks, there's some very unique and very unusual ones for which there just really is no comparison. You think of the infamous Bay State Blue. There's really not another ink out there that is quite like Bay State Blue. And I have it and I use it, but because of the reports from other people of damage to their pens, especially pens with latex sacks or pens, certain pens from certain manufacturers. Because I've got so much ink, I just don't see the point in taking a risk. And that's what it is. It may be a very small risk. It may be a statistically insignificant risk, but for me, if I'm going to put ink in a $1,200 pen, which some of my pens cost that much money, I'm going to be quite particular about the inks I'm willing to put in that pen. And that's generally that's kind of the combination of why I don't buy a lot of Noodler's inks anymore, and I don't use them often. Now, I've said all that being said, I have absolutely, if people buy and love and want to use Nathan's inks, I think that's wonderful. I am a big fan of anything that promotes the fountain pen hobby. And I'll say this for Nathan, he has a huge array of inks in a huge array of colors with a huge array of writing characteristics. He is obsessed with providing value, which I think is great, to the point where you have to be real careful the first time you open a bottle of Noodler's ink. If any of you have ever opened one somewhat haphazardly, you'll understand what I'm talking about. So just that's kind of the big picture. But like I said, if you love Noodler's inks, use them. By all means, use them. What I say doesn't matter. It doesn't matter for Jack. I mean, crying out loud, go do what you enjoy, do what makes you happy, do what you can afford. That might be a big thing for some people. So, by all means. Anyway, and stepping down off my soapbox, let's look at another one of my re-reviews. So early on in my collection, I bought a pen from the now defunct retailer Conway Stewart. This is the Conway Stewart Wellington. This is a limited edition made of their Dartmoor acrylic. This is number 29 of 50. I bought this at my now defunct local pen store, World Lux. May they rest in peace. Lovely Dartmoor acrylic with the silver, and you can tell it's silver because it's tarnished, and I have not polished it for a while. Clip with the Conway Stewart logo, and it came with this Conway Stewart fine italic nib. Now, this is one of those pens that when I got it, it barely wrote. The nib was a mess. I sent it to Mike Masayama. Conway Stewart sent it to Mike Masayama. It was my first experience with him. And when it came back, it was a beautiful writer. And there is a reason this pen is still in my collection. I love it. It's got some heft to it. The material's gorgeous. It's super comfortable in the hand. It really is a lovely, lovely writer. And it's an interesting shape. It's not quite like anything else out there. And in fact, I liked it so much, I had a custom pen made also out of Conway Stewart acrylic. So this is Conway Stewart's classic green acrylic. And this was made for me by Renee from Scriptorium Pens, and comes with this bronze, I believe. Yeah, I believe this is a bronze clip with the Scriptorium logo. So it even has, kind of the similar logo on there. So yeah, I liked it a lot. And she did, you can look at them side by side here. She did really a really nice job on matching the look and the feel of the pen. So really like it, still use it quite a bit. That's why it's still in my collection, and why I even went so far as to have another custom pen made from. That's the thing. When Conway Stewart went out of business, a lot of their materials got the rod stock got sold off, and somehow Renee got a hold of a bunch of it. And there's some really neat material out there. There's one material called Evergreen, which she had. I don't know if she still has. I reserved enough for a pen of that evergreen material. So I'm on the waiting list probably 4 or 5 months out to have another pen made out of that lovely evergreen material. Conway Stewart had some great custom unique materials, and I'm super excited about that one as well. All right, before we go on to another set of questions, I thought it would be a good time to talk for a moment about the sponsor for this episode. So You've heard me talk about them before, but Van Ness Pens at Van Ness 1938 is sponsoring this episode. And like a lot of the previous times we've talked about them, they are still really heavily focused on the new Aurora Optima pricing. They've got the whole production line in stock now in a whole bunch of amazing nib varieties. So you can get the burgundy, the beautiful green, which I love this pen, the beautiful blue. They've got the Perla, which is kind of a silvery white, and then different trims. They've got gold and silver trim for some of the pens. They also have just stocked up on the limited edition Aurora 88 Soleil, which is that bright orange material with it's kind of a cigar-shaped pen with bright orange material. So both of those are available at Van Ness Pens right now. I was following Lisa Van Ness on Instagram, and she pointed out that they have, this was just astonishing to me, they have 1,138 colors of ink in stock right now. 1,138 colors of ink. That's insane. That's just absolutely insane. Kind of cool, but also insane. So if you're looking for great ink, you're looking for some great pens, they've got some really neat new old stock stuff, as well as the great selection of Auroras that they have, at the new pricing. And like I have talked about before, they are doing a 10% discount for Pen Habit viewers. So if you use the code PENHABIT at checkout on an Aurora Optima, you will get 10% off that already lower price on the Aurora Optima. So make sure you head over there. They also, I will just point out there, carry the Inky Fingers notebook line. So if you want to buy one of my notebooks, one of my Inky Fingers notebooks, and get some ink and get some great pens all at one place, Van Ness Pens at Van Ness 1938 is a really excellent place to do so. So thank you to them for supporting the Pen Habit. All right, let's grab another question here while I grab another drink. All right. Ted from Maine asks, have you ever actually used up an entire bottle of ink since you began using fountain pens? Yes. This bottle right here. This is the only bottle which I have ever used up. And people are like, you haven't used it all up. I've used it all up. There's not enough there to fill a converter. This is Iroshizuku Kujaku. It's the first bottle of Iroshizuku ink I ever bought. I like the ink a lot still, and for a long time it was the ink I used in most of my reviews because I was trying to get rid of it. So, but that is, aside from a couple of bottles of ink that I've had to pour down the sink because they've gone bad, that is the only bottle that I have actually finished by writing, and it took me about 4 years. So there you go. Okay, this is a good question. Curtis from California asks, what is the difference between a workhorse pen and your top pens? What would make something like an Aurora Optima not a workhorse pen? So for me, there is very little difference. That's because I have no sense of the value of money, as I've talked about ad nauseum before. For me, a workhorse pen is a pen about which you don't need to be precious. So it's a pen where it can take a little bit of a beating. If the finish gets a little bit dinged up, it's not the end of the world. It's not one of those things where you need to lay it down on a bed of, on a bed of rose petals to keep it from getting scratched, which I'll be honest, I baby this thing because I think it's beautiful. I would hate to mar the finish on this pen. Now, for me, a pen like this is the Franklin Christoph 66 Stabilis. I don't know how they pronounce that. This is a pen, it's an acrylic pen, so it's pretty sturdy, but it's not this. And I love this pen. I'm doing a review of this pen right now. That's why I have it in here. Not right now, but in the next day or two. But I'm willing to be a little bit rougher with this pen than I am with something like this, or my classic pens LB5s, or my, Divina. I also find that workhorse pens need to be a little bit more understated than some of the really expensive pens, simply because it becomes like with my Divina, my Visconti Divina. I love that pen. but it's so large and so ornate, it becomes impractical in some cases. And for me, a workhorse pen is a pen of practicality first and foremost. So for me, it's got to have a clip. It's got to have good ink capacity. It's got to write perfectly every time. None of this drying, skipping, having to prime the feed, any of that kind of stuff. So for me, that's kind of where the differences lie. Now, I will take my expensive pens with me to work, or I will take my expensive pens with me when I go travel and use them to write letters because for me, part of it is the joy of using the pens. But if I'm going to, stick a pen in my pocket and carry it around with me as I'm walking about or take it to the grocery store, it's probably not going to be one of my most expensive pens. It's probably going to be something like, I think my new favorite workhorse pen, and this is kind of a sneak preview, is the Pilot Custom Heritage 823. It's still expensive on the expensive side, but it's not something I need to be precious about. But it's so wonderful. Oh my gosh, this pen is so wonderful. Other workhorse pens for me include the Delta Fusion 82 is one. The Platinum 3776 is, in my mind, a quintessential workhorse pen. The Lamy 2000. All of these pens are pens which may not stand out a ton, but they're going to write. They're going to write well every time. You can rely on them, and they're understated and robust enough that they can take a little bit of a beating without, feeling like you've ruined this really expensive thing. All right. I can't believe I'm doing this. Oh, all right, here we go. This is the Pilot Metropolitan. Now, chances are, if you have watched this far into this video, you knew what this was before I even opened my mouth. This is probably the most well-known fountain pen of the last 2 or 3 years, with the possible exception of the Lamy Safari. Everyone knows this fountain pen. It's $15, comes in a wide variety of colors. Usually it's a medium nib and a fine nib. Those are your two options. And it is very, very highly respected. People love their Metropolitans. So I don't love this pen. It's a fine pen. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it. And I will say that it writes beautifully every time. I've never had a skipping, a hard starting. It's got a nice nib. It's not a wonderful nib. It's a good nib. But I find this pen so tremendously uncomfortable to write with. For my hands and the way I grip my pen, the nib is too short, the section is too narrow, the step down is too drastic between the barrel because I hold my pens further back, so I'm generally like this. And in order for me to hold it on the section, I'd have to hold it really close, and then I can't get the nib to the paper without having to change it from an angle like this, which is the angle I like to write at, kind of a 45-degree angle, to almost a 60 or 70-degree angle. So I don't love this pen. I also really don't love Pilot's converter system. So the pen comes with a cartridge and a Con 20 converter, which is the little squeezy converter. It can use the Con 40 and Con 50. The Con 50, I think, is kind of going out. Con 40 is its replacement, which is a twist style converter. Both of those have ink capacities, not great ink capacities. The cartridges are actually pretty good for ink capacity. I don't mind the cartridges. And then the large size, the Con 70, won't fit in this pen. So I'm not gaga about the pen, never have been. I have softened my stance a little bit from when I did my original review. I can see where the value is, and any pen that gets people into the hobby is a pen I can support. It's just not the pen for me. So, and that comes down to the question, well, why do you have it? I actually have 3. All the 3 of them were sent to me, not pens that I purchased myself. And I haven't sold them because honestly, they're so inexpensive that since I charge people for shipping, I would have to sell them at so low a price it would hardly be worth the effort to package them up and stick them in the mail. So I haven't decided what I'm going to do with these. I may just throw them in with a giveaway at some point. Um, but I don't love the Pilot Metropolitan. It's a fine, like I said, it's a fine pen. It's not for me. So there you go. And the reason I hesitated before even talking about it is because every time I bring up the fact that I don't particularly care for the Pilot Metropolitan, the haters come out. Holy cow, people are crazy passionate about this and the Lamy Safari, which is another pen I don't really care for. All right. Hugh, or who, I apologize, HUW from London asks, do you insure your pens, assuming they aren't covered under your general house contents insurance? If so, how do you use it? My pen collection is, fortunately, I verified this with my insurance agent, covered under my homeowner's insurance, so I don't have separate insurance. There is such a thing as collector's insurance. I will probably look into getting that before too long because the value of my pens is high enough now that just for an extra little bit of coverage, and it probably isn't that expensive. But aside from my general homeowners coverage, I don't really insure my pens aside from that, and that seems to be ample now. So there you go. All right, Dusty from Bethlehem, Pennsylvania asks, with starting a new job, what is your coworkers' reaction to your pens in your videos? Interestingly, complete and total disinterest, at least initially at the new job. No one seemed to notice or care. A couple people would comment, but mostly they commented on my handwriting, not on the pen I was using to write with. There were a couple people who was like, "Wow, that's a nice pen," but it's the same. I think it's the same as anyone who starts writing with a fountain pen. It's like, "Oh, is that a calligraphy pen?" Um, I'm sure they don't have any idea how expensive some of the pens are. As for the videos, I actually talked a little bit about that in my interview process. That I have experience putting together video content and teaching and training and that sort of thing. So I think at least the hiring people and the people who interviewed me knew. I talk about it a little bit, but they're, for the most part, this new job is, my last job was a much slower pace than my new job is. My new job is just like, you're booked for 3 meetings at all times, all day long, from the moment you walk in until the moment you leave, kind of a thing. It's like I never get any work done because all I do is sit in meetings. And I still have to pick which 2 meetings I'm not going to go to because I'm scheduled for 3 at any one time. It's kind of chaos. So I honestly, I haven't been able to use my pens at work very much the last couple of weeks because the speed of information is so fast. I never have any time in the day to transfer the knowledge I would write down by hand into my computer. And so as I struggle to figure out how to work in this new environment, I've had to go back to all digital until I can kind of find my footing and figure out where and when I can use my pens. And right now, my pens are mostly for journaling, and that's about it. Journaling and the occasional letter writing. So that's about it. All right. Want to do one more re-review and maybe one more question. So the final re-review is a pen I don't have in my collection anymore. It is the Faber-Castell Ambition. So this was a pen that I bought at the University of Washington bookstore extension store in Bothell, Washington. And it was made of coconut wood. Real pretty pen out of a really unusual material. Faber-Castell does good nibs. Their steel nibs are really, really good nibs. And I really liked the nib on this pen. I sold it quite a while ago, actually, for a couple reasons. One, I wanted to buy more pens, and it was a pen I found myself not using very often. This is a recurring theme with me. It's like if I find myself not using it very often and I want to buy a new pen, I have to kind of clean out an old pen. So that was one. The other reason was I didn't love the ergonomics of that pen. There was no section on the pen. It was just a cylinder. So there really was not an ergonomic. So this is my Kenalea Kahakai, Kenalea Pens Kahakai. Imagine if this was the pen itself as opposed to just the cap, because this doesn't have really any ergonomics to it. It just is what it is. That's kind of the way the pen was. I prefer my sections to have some concavity or some sort of ergonomic contour to them to make them more comfortable to hold. So for me, that was a pen that I liked it. I loved the way it looked. I loved the materials it was made from. The nib was gorgeous. But I was just missing the ergonomics, and because of that, I wasn't using it all that often. So it was time to find a new home. All right, well, let's say it's the last question. Depending on how long it takes me to answer, I may do one more. This is from Tom in Orlando, Florida. Oh, this is a good question. What motivates you to do all the Pen Habit content? I look at everything you produce and it seems like a lot of work. All the videos, photography, written reviews, and more. How do you keep it from turning into drudgery? Well, for starters, I don't. Um, here's where we go honesty with Matt. So, what motivates me? Well, for starters, I am an attention whore. It's the musical theater performer in me. I like to be in front of people. But more than that, I have always had a really strong love of teaching and sharing knowledge. I don't know if you've heard of it's the Gallup organization. They do this thing called the Strengths Builder or Strengths Finder, excuse me. And I had to take this test when I started my new job, and my top 5 strengths are in order: intellection, input, strategic, achiever, and learning. So 3 of the 5 were about knowledge and information and gathering it and synthesizing it. One of them, strategic, is taking all of that information, crunching it together, and coming up with a plan of action. And the third, or the last one, was all about getting stuff done. And I read through the descriptions of each of these, and I was like, this feels less like I took a personality test and more like someone wrote my biography, because it was so scarily accurate for the kind of personality I am. I like to create things. I like to get stuff done. Tonight, before I go to bed, I got home at about 6:00. I'm going to record this video, copy it over to my computer, start editing. I might even finish editing, record an hour of the audiobook that I'm narrating, do the dishes, go to bed, wake up, and do it all over again. And I do this 7 days a week, all the time. So part of it is my personality. It's just, I like to get stuff done. I like to have something I can point to and say, look, I did that. And I find that the way I learn best about a subject is to share what I already know, and then synthesize the new information that comes in. So if you go back and watch my initial video, like the video of my Mont Blanc 149, which is one of the first videos I ever did, it's embarrassing how little I know about fountain pens. And the thought that I could get in front of a camera and talk about a pen and have even the slightest bit of authority to know what I'm talking about, it's embarrassing to watch. I can't watch my early videos. I can't stand to. I can't even stand to watch some of my videos from last year. It's so for me, doing this is a personal learning thing, as much as anything else, because I learned so much by putting each one of these videos together, and by the comments and the feedback and the information that people share as a result of watching the videos. I also have a real love of sharing information. If I were to pick a Harry Potter character, I think I'd probably be Hermione, because I was that kid who always had, oh, I know, call on me. So I think that's part of it. But as because I taught singing at a university in Utah for several years, and I loved teaching. It was one of my favorite things I've ever done. I just wish it paid better. So yeah, I think that those things combine to help keep me motivated to do this. But I'll be real honest. The longer I stay in this hobby, the harder and harder it becomes to stay motivated to keep doing as much as I do with the pen habit, simply because my tastes have changed, my desire to acquire has changed, um, and I find myself not as interested in diving into deep diving into every little tiny aspect of the community that changes and grows and gets announced and things like that. So for me, the motivations are still mostly in what can I learn and how can I share it. But I think where it has helped me to support my own pen habit was to give me a community of people to share it with, which was vital. Um, to helping me get out of that I've got to acquire everything mode. It helped me learn what I liked and what I didn't like, and to make smarter choices. And I love that. And I'll tell you what, the thing that gets me more fired up about doing the pen habit than anything else is going to a pen show. Um, when I'm starting to feel like I'm burned out and I'm ready to take another break, even though it's only been a couple months, the thing that always gets me revved up again is going to a pen show and interacting with people. You know, sitting in the bar after the show, talking about what we got or just, our lives. Um, I don't make friends easily, and it gets harder and harder as I get older to make friends. And I have been increasingly gobsmacked by the friends I have made in this industry. It's really, or in this community, it's really a neat group of people, a thoughtful group of people, a group of people who understand introverts and who appreciate kind of the nerdy leanings that I tend to exhibit. So that's noisy. So yeah, I think for me, it's the people, the ability to learn, and the ability to share that knowledge. And that was a really, really long-winded way of saying that. So great question. I love that question. All right. Well, I think that is going to do it for this episode of Currently Inked. Thank you again so much to Van Ness Pens for supporting this episode of Currently Inked. You can find them at vanness1938.com, and don't forget to use the code PENHABIT for 10% off an Aurora Optima at checkout. And thank you for joining me. I really do appreciate it. Don't forget to head over to penhabit.com to check out the show notes from this episode, see the other reviews, check out the giveaway. As of the day this publishes, the giveaway going on at penhabit.com is a Tactile Turn Gist, which is a beautiful $200 pen. It's the polycarbonate version with Damascus steel. So go over there. You can fill out the form and get entered into that giveaway. I think you'll love the pen. And it's only a few days from the day this publishes on Thursday the 27th. The contest ends on that following Saturday. So you only have a couple days from the day this publishes to get over there and check out that giveaway. There'll be other giveaways coming. I've still got a ton of pens to give away, and some of them are very nice. Very, very nice. So anyway, thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. You out there are what makes doing this enjoyable for me. And we will see you here next time on The Pen Habit.